So earlier today, we got two really interesting updates coming out with some quarterback options for the Las Vegas Raiders as we get on the other side of the Super Bowl week as the 2024 season officially comes to an end. As we approach that March 10th start of free agency, the Raiders are kind of in an interesting spot, right? Because there's so much you can do with the cap. The Raiders have a lot of flexibility. They have 27 players that are currently pending free agents. You have $100 million, right? So there's a lot the Raiders can do at this point. And earlier today, the New York Jets official Twitter account put it out there that they have informed Aaron Rodgers that they will be moving in a different direction from the New York Jets quarterback. And this got a lot of people talking on social media, specifically talking about should the Raiders hop in and actually go out there and bring in a guy like Aaron Rodgers. And to me, it's just an interesting thought process, really thinking about the quarterback position because, the Raiders can go all in over the next 3 to 4 years as Pete Carroll is still here with the team. They can go all in. They can try winning a Super Bowl in that 3 or 4 year span, or they can say let's build this out long term. Let's build it out. Let's get conservative. Let's go out there and say let's take a quarterback maybe in the second round. Maybe you develop him a little bit, or maybe you go all in with Aaron Rodgers, right? So there's definitely different strategies that the Raiders can kind of approach. And I'm not opposed to bringing in Aaron Rodgers, and I know a lot of people don't like Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people are opposed, especially to some of his views. But I'll be the first to tell you guys, when it comes to being a good quarterback, Aaron Rodgers has proven himself as a good quarterback. And I know some people are going to say, is he still a good quarterback? Like, is he still going to be able to get it done? Just this past season, it was really not that bad, right? He had 28 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. He had almost 4,000 yards. And we do have to remember, he just came back from an Achilles tendon injury, right? He just came back from this injury that cost him the entirety of last season. He comes back, he throws 28 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. That's not that bad, right? And truth be told, Aaron Rodgers actually got better and better as the season went on. For the Football Scout channel, the Jets are one of the teams that I watched. So I watched a lot of Jets tape this year. And Aaron Rodgers really isn't that bad of a quarterback. The guy's still pretty decent. Obviously, the New York Jets' biggest issue this past season was the fact that they moved off of Robert Saleh. Plus, they really didn't have a good offensive coach. And I think you put those two factors together, you weren't really set up to have success, right? And I think for the Raiders, as you go into next season, the Raiders are in a really good spot, believe it or not, right? You could potentially bring in Aaron Rodgers at a discounted rate, considering the fact that he'll still be under contract with the New York Jets, similar to the way Russell Wilson went to the Steelers this past season, and he cost the Steelers just a couple $1 million. The Raiders might be able to do that with Aaron Rodgers as well, so you're potentially bringing in a guy that might not cost you a whole lot of money. Right, from a cap space perspective for the next year or two, this could make a lot of sense for the Raiders. The fact that he's still a good quarterback as well, right? Don't overlook the fact that, the Raiders right now, the way they're kind of constructed, they're built basically going to be a defensive team, right? But they could easily flip away from that because of the fact that they have a lot of free agents, right? Just in our secondary, Nate Hobbs, Trayvon Merrick are pending free agents. Isaiah Pola-Mao, Marcus Epps, right? Those guys are pending free agents. You look at our linebackers, our two starting linebackers, Robert Spillane, Divine Diablo, they're pending free agents. Malcolm Koonce, Clavon Chase, and Adam Butler, starting caliber players, they're all pending free agents. So the Raiders can essentially go from this defensive-minded team and say, let's go a little bit more towards the offensive side of the football. Maybe you let all of those guys walk and maybe you replace them via free agency. Maybe you replace them via draft. Or maybe you say, let's go out there and, instead of spending $20 million on Trayvon Merrick and $20 million on Malcolm Koonce, let's spend $30 million on T. Higgins and let's run it back with that offense and let's get Aaron Rodgers for just a couple $1 million. Right? I think for the Raiders, there's so many different strategies you can go down. And there's, you can't argue the fact that Aaron Rodgers still is a solid quarterback, right? He's still a good quarterback. Truth be told, how many Raiders quarterbacks have had 28 touchdowns to 11 interceptions? That ratio right there. How many quarterbacks in the last 20 years have done that for the Raiders, right? Plus, the fact that we have a lot of flexibility, the fact that you're, the offensive coach, the head coach, the defensive coach, the pairing the Raiders have right now, we might not have that in 3 years. Patrick Graham might be a head coach in 3 years. Chip Kelly might be a head coach in 3 years. So this coaching staff could be the best that the Raiders have. I think you got to consider going all in on that quarterback. I think you got to consider going all in. If Aaron Rodgers costs you $2 or $3 million to be able to come in, you maybe draft the running back, a guard, you bring in a defensive end, right? Or maybe it's a safety or whatever you decide to kind of do. And then maybe you sign some of these other guys that are pending free agents, right? To me, the Raiders have so many options, and it actually excites me as we kind of go forward because we have people that have actually built teams, have had success, people that are knowledgeable about football, right? We don't have guys anymore that are going to say, hey, let's take Tyree Wilson over Jalen Carter. We don't have guys anymore that are going to say, let's take Alex Leatherwood over Christian Darrisaw. We don't have those guys, in the building anymore. We have people that are actually legit at what they do, and they know how to kind of draft. So it'll be interesting to see if the Raiders potentially target a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Keep in mind, at the moment, the Raiders are favorites for Aaron Rodgers. So it's interesting however you look at it. There's another report. This one actually comes out from Colin Cowherd, who some people will say is not a good source. This guy works for like Fox or wherever he works. And this guy is not a good source, right? He doesn't actually have inside information. And I would actually disagree with that. Colin Cowherd is I'm pretty sure, based out of Los Angeles. More than being based out of Los Angeles, he's friends with the executives of both the Rams and the Chargers. This guy was in the draft room a couple years back with the Chargers. Right? This guy has inside information because he's friends with a lot of these people within those teams. And he's putting it out there that the Los Angeles Rams are looking to potentially trade Matthew Stafford. And they're looking to potentially move off of that a little bit. And that's another option for the Las Vegas Raiders. Very similar to Aaron Rodgers, you're bringing in a quarterback that you might be able to keep for 2 or 3 years. You're bringing in a quarterback that has had success over the past couple of years. And again, you're taking advantage of that, Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll at the top, Patrick Graham on that defensive side. You're taking advantage of that coaching staff, and you're saying, we're going to try to win it with this staff. And of course, you'll have to kind of just figure out how you're going to mold, Matthew Stafford and kind of build that offense, figure out which guys you're going to release, which guys you're going to bring back. But the Raiders have options, and Matthew Stafford's another guy that could potentially be on the move. Now, Matthew Stafford is different than Aaron Rodgers, right? One, Aaron Rodgers is already going to be moved off the Jets. Although it hasn't been official, the Jets posting it is as official as it gets. They'll probably make the actual announcement within the next couple of weeks. It could, for the Jets, be a post-June 1st cut, which would split the $49 million in dead cap that they'll have in the next 2 seasons, as opposed to just next season. Stafford's different. Stafford's going to want a new contract. That's going to be a $40 million per year, if not even more than that, right? Matthew Stafford might be looking to cash out the same way Kirk Cousins cashed out with the Atlanta Falcons, right? $160 million that Kirk Cousins signed with the Falcons. Matthew Stafford is potentially looking for that same type of contract. So for the Raiders, you're going to have to pay Stafford a lot more. Plus, the Rams want an actual pick. And Colin Cowherd actually put this out there that, one, the New York Giants don't like this draft class that's coming up. Right, he's heard from a really good source the Giants do not like the draft class, and Matthew Stafford to the Giants could make sense because the Rams apparently want that 3rd overall pick because the Rams feel like, although they're not going to take a quarterback this year, they want to try to get that 3rd overall pick. They want to potentially move down, get some assets for future years to move up in next year's class. So Colin Cowherd is officially putting this out there, and again, I know it's Colin Cowherd. But Colin Cowherd knows people, right? The guy knows people around the NFL. He has legit sources. He's put it out there in the past, right? Guys that he think will end up somewhere, guys that might not be happy or whatever it is. And sometimes those things do come true. And Matthew Stafford's another option. Now, obviously, this is linking the Rams quarterback to the Giants. But for the Raiders, this is another quarterback that might actually be available for you if you want to go out there and potentially get him. I think Matthew Stafford's still a good quarterback. I think he still has a couple of good years left. And again, if you're trying to win a Super Bowl and you want to actually be successful, and keep in mind, right, this is the short-term plan. And I'm all for it, man. If the Raiders want to go in and say, short-term plan, let's win that Super Bowl, why not, right? We've seen Tom Brady go to the Buccaneers and win. We saw Peyton Manning go to the Denver Broncos, and he won with them. Why not the Raiders kind of take that same approach and try to win one as well? None of those two guys are phenomenal quarterbacks. They're elite quarterbacks. But Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers are pretty elite quarterbacks as well, right? And remember, you just got to be able to build it right and have a good coaching staff in place to really make it work. Now, I know we're talking about these reports, and some people are going to say, are the Raiders actually even interested in this strategy? Like, is this what the Raiders actually want to do? Do they really want to go down the route of, let's bring in a veteran quarterback? Well, Jeremy Fowler, who works for ESPN, actually said that is what executives around the NFL are actually telling him. He said this in one of his articles. He said, multiple league executives have predicted that Sam Darnold is a viable option given the Las Vegas Raiders are picking outside of the top 5 in the draft, I want you guys to think about this, right? So Jeremy Fowler is basically putting it out there because of the fact that the Raiders are picking outside the top 5. It would make sense for them to go all in on a guy like Sam Darnold, right? Basically a veteran quarterback. And again, that kind of ties into Matthew Stafford's a veteran, Aaron Rodgers is a veteran. Those are options you can potentially go down the route because we are picking outside the top 5. And we got to be honest. If the Giants don't like this quarterback class, according to Colin Cowherd, that means the Giants, who need a quarterback with the 3rd overall pick, who will have the option to take the 2nd best quarterback in this class, they're not interested in that, right? The Giants are not interested in getting a quarterback. So what does that actually mean for the Raiders, right? That means you might actually be able to land Shedeur Sanders with the 6th overall pick. But remember, the Raiders also might not be interested in the quarterback class. Outside of Cam Ward, the Raiders might say, we don't want any of these other quarterbacks with the 6th overall pick. We think Travis Hunter, T-Mac, we think Mason Graham or Josh Connerly Jr., we think these guys are more valuable at that 6th pick than the 2nd quarterback in this class, who we value as a 3rd round pick, right? So we don't really know, right? But we will find out over the next couple of weeks. And it does look like the Raiders are at least interested in that veteran quarterback market. And I'm 100% for it, man. I know it's not perfect for the long-term solution that you go out there and get one of these veteran quarterbacks. Yeah, ideally, you want to go draft Patrick Mahomes at 25 years old. You want to draft, Matthew Stafford at 25 years old. And I get it. The perfect world, Jaden Daniels, CJ Stroud are Las Vegas Raiders quarterbacks. But remember, that's not the only way you can have success. And truth be told, you're a worse team if you go all in with the 6th overall pick on a quarterback that busts out, then actually just draft the best player available with the 6th overall pick. You will be a worse team in 2 years because one quarterback's going to bust out while Christian Darrisaw becomes an all-pro player, while Jalen Carter becomes the greatest defensive tackle on planet Earth. You take the traits or, some potential or whatever over the best player available, and in 2 or 3 years, that could work against you. And I think for the Raiders, if the quarterback class is not good, there's no point in reaching for one of those at the 6th overall pick. Just go out there and get a veteran. Maybe draft a guy with like a 2nd or 3rd round pick and see if there's some upside. Maybe we develop him behind one of these veterans. It's going to be an interesting offseason. I'm telling you guys right now, man. It might be slow for the next, 4 weeks. We'll get a couple reports here or there. But at some point, it's going to pick up, man. And it's going to be just straight headed downhill. And I'm excited for it, man. This is probably the most excited I've been for the Las Vegas Raiders in years. Right, and I truly say that because one of the things I've learned in the last 10 years is your head coach matters, your offensive coordinator matters, right? Your play caller, your defensive coordinator matters, and then your quarterback matters as well. But quarterback matters sometimes less than the coaching staff. And I think with the Raiders, you have a pretty solid coaching staff. Right? I think you have a pretty solid foundation. Yeah, you'll have to go out there and add a couple of pieces here or there, but remember, the Commanders went from the 2nd overall pick to literally the conference championship game, right? That was in 1 year. The Texans went from the 2nd overall pick to they're in the playoffs for 2 straight years, right? Sometimes having a bottom 5 or 10 pick doesn't mean you're as bad as your record indicates. Sometimes it just comes down to the fact that maybe the coaching staff wasn't that good. Maybe you need to add 1 or 2 pieces. And I think that's kind of where the Raiders were at, and we're actually on the right path, right? We have the coaching staff. We have some key players that we brought in last year in Paris Johnson and Brock Bowers. Things look bright for the Raiders, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.